now we're going to kind of get into the rise section for CC, kind of talking about college and kind of where you took off after that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was about 17, I stopped doing drugs. I remember relapsing one time when I was 18 and just actually feeling proud of the relapse in a sense that I was like, oh, I just used once. I don't need to use again. Like, oh, I know what I'm doing now. I can like move on from that. And then I never used hard drugs again. Um, so I was about 18 and I graduated high school. I went to the school college connection program at Sault College because I was 18 and I hadn't been to school in like 6 months, and there were 6 months of the school year left, or, you know, four, because it's really 8 months, right? Left, and I knew if I didn't graduate by the time I was 18, then my dad, who worked his ass off in the one bedroom apartment and fought addiction and poverty to raise me, was going to be really pissed. So I registered at that school college connection program because Carla, Miss Kimmins, which is Kim's older sister, graduated from that program too, and she said that it was really good and the teachers there were really supportive and there was food.
But the big
So
part was the food, though.
yeah, and like I was already living on my own then. I had left my dad's when I was 15, got an apartment when I was 16, and yeah, so I graduated from that program and ended up taking peace and conflict studies. I applied for peace and conflict studies and business, and then I applied for peace and conflict studies because I was copying Kim, because Kim applied for PSW and peace and conflict studies, and you chose PSW.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
work at the end, $20 an hour means I went to school for a reason. Peace and conflict studies, I'm like, what do I do with this, right? So
but I'm a dreamer.
that's right, that's right.
So I took the peace and conflict studies, and it was a good thing I did because I was really angry. I needed some of that peace in my life. I was
Yes.
angry at my dad for, because we were so close, for not, being there for me. I was angry at society because I was living in poverty as I didn't understand intersectionality then, but I was a young Indigenous woman living on my own in poverty in downtown with mental illness, with like, whatever
A
others.
young Indigenous woman who is probably like for a lot of the years in youth was called an Oreo because,
Oh
and
yeah,
like struggling with that alone on top of living in poverty and all of this hate and anger, like you just needed to find your ways, right? Like find yourself, your sense of self.
yeah, because I am quite settler. Like my family on both sides has like mixed race, so like no one's really like one particular race, right? So like my dad has blonde hair and blue eyes, and like so he has that privilege, and so the world was very much designed for him, and he raised me. So despite what other barriers I guess he had, so it was like really hard. Um, so I'm glad that I did the peace and conflict studies because I met some professors and some people that were really patient with me at Sioux College. So I appreciate that because there was skills that I didn't build from 15 to 18 because I was not being parented, because I had left home, about how to behave, proper vocabulary, controlling anger, controlling emotions, controlling as if like we have to be a certain way, but even just being able to manage my regular emotions while I'm dealing with poverty, and coming out of addiction at that time was challenging, but I learned a lot of life skills at peace and conflict studies. So I graduated that 2-year college program with 9 other people. There was only 10 of us, so it was a really small group. So shout out to my peace and conflict studies people, because that's when I started public speaking. um, so I just wasn't an angry girl at the mic anymore. Kim and I used to yell at each other in high school across the cafeteria, but it's not quite the same. But
Like
I don't,
cafeteria, the smoking line everywhere. It was
yeah. And
so
I'm
fun.
just, yeah. So like at that time, I started using my voice, and in a more productive way, and did some public speaking at town halls and for Sioux Youth Association. And I really felt like instead of being angry, I could actually do something with my voice. And I just wanted to like intersect and throw the mic to Kanika about this, because I'm not sure when you started using your voice or how that like made you feel or when that switch was, but you were mentioning like you started using your poetry and rapping.
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of mention real quick that it was once you started using your voice that I took notice of you. Like there were some articles on See Today that had your face and your name in them, and I was like, man, who is this girl? Like again, she's really pretty and she's like really smart and she's like really cool. She's doing some awesome stuff. I put the energy out in the universe and was like, one day, and then yeah, the whole "we made it" thing happened. So for me, the transition started to happen after I met a few friends in high school that were already like they writing rhymes, and like they had known each other already and they were having parties, and you know they had a community, and I was still kind of like a floater. Because I'd moved around a lot, I just kind of figured out how to drift around friend groups so that, you know, when the inevitable happened and I had to leave, I wasn't too attached to anyone. So yeah, I started dabbling in different friends groups. Some were more the party lifestyle, and that was where I like realized that there were music heads and there were like hip hop heads, and there's like this whole other scene going on that I hadn't heard about. And then my cousin introduced me to Mike Swift and DJ Seith and Matt Swift, like Matt Sylvester and fucking JFK, and all of these people who were like used to be Borderline's finest. And I was like, oh my God. And I ended up having a New Year's Eve party, and I had all these people in my house ciphering, like in my basement. And I was
All
like,
of these brand names.
I was like 14 years old, and I was like, what's going on right now? And at the time I'd had like my first official written rhyme on my computer, and I dragged Mike Spliff over. I was like, yeah, I got this thing to show you. Like, let me know what you think. I know it's kind of stupid, but like he started reading it and I started spitting it to him, and he was like, oh man, that's really good. Like just stay on that one day and you'll be like on stages with us and shit. Just keep doing it. You got something. And so I was like, okay. So it was, yeah, that initial kind of like, okay, this guy who's already been doing this for a while and is like involved with a bunch of people that are doing this is telling me that I got something. So I'm going to stick with it. And that turned into like my automatic way of venting, like anything that I had to say. And because I didn't have counselors, like I had been trying to get access to them, but they were all very temporary resources. So like, I needed to vent, I needed to get it out. And I started to seek out instrumentals, and I started to write these little rhymes and spit them at parties, and people started taking notice. And I got linked up with a friend named Nathan, and he ended up trying to produce a beat with me and bringing me into his friend's home studio, Dave Palaya, and they recorded my first song for me. And then it was through Nathan that we got linked up with a show at Lop Lops, and I got on stage with DJ C for the first time. And like meeting DJ Seith and being like, oh my God. And at first I was like, does this guy is he clean cut? Is he sober right now? Because it really, really intrigued me that someone could get that hype and not be on any drugs. And that stuck with me. It made a huge impact. And I was like, huh.
Because the environment, you're like, damn, people could do that?
Yeah. And like you can get crazy and not have to get out of your head, and you can remember it all. So like,
thank you.
Yeah, that's when it started like really being a big thing for me. And Steve like kept bringing me up on stage, and we started planning shows together, and yeah, man, jam sessions, and
we ended up in front of 5,000 kids at one point.
Yeah, dude, we did. So that was
like cool. That's so cool for the kids. That's cool for the kids that they can see that energy too without having to get out of your head, right? So
yeah, that was a crazy accomplishment. And that was something that one day walking to one of those bar shows, I just kind of like looked at the SR Center as I was walking past it half cut, and I was like, one day I'll be opening in front of somebody for that thing packed. And like 2 years later, their DJ Seith was like, so we have this opportunity. Yes,
that's incredible.
I'm always looking to find that in, if we can find it in any way, shape, or form, and bust those doors open for the people that need to get in there and get on that stage, and it'd be that positive influence. And you were just amazing on that stage, and I'm so grateful for having the chance to have been able to share the stage with you and with everybody that I've been able to do it with on through everything that we've done. And sorry.
It had such a positive impact, and that's where I really started checking myself and being like, do I need to get drunk to socialize? Do I need to get high to be comfortable in my own skin? And started doing some soul searching and really connecting with people through the music that I was doing, and connecting with Seith while we were collaborating, and he was coming up with samples, and I'd just be like, wait, that one, put it here, and just that feeling really
the little tiny bedroom.
made me realize oh my gosh, maybe it's good to be in my head, maybe it's fun to be in my skin, and I can do this. So it took a lot of years, but eventually I got sober, and that's how I
found a wholeness, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely.
That reminds me of when you went sober and were super on your evolvement when you came back from Katimavik, Kim, before you went to college.
Yeah, that was huge actually. If it wasn't for Katimavik and being able to travel and spend that time alone and with myself, because I definitely grew up in shadows of siblings and parents and reputations and whatever. So being away and finding my own independence, finding that, and soberly, because Katimavik's dry house, right? You're allowed, if you're of drinking age, you're allowed to go out and drink, but you're not allowed to come home wasted. You're not allowed to come home annihilated. And if you are, you get the boot. And this was the first opportunity that I got to find out what the other side of non-poverty life looks like, right? It was incredible. The houses we lived in, the things that we got to do, I'm like, this is what I want in life. And when I came home back to that exact point where I left, it was whoa, how do I found myself while I was gone, but now how do I find myself when I'm in the same tide pool that I started off in? All of those habits come crashing back, and all of these people come back and they're like, let's go do this. And I'm like, I don't really feel like doing that anymore. It's trying to just figure out, and we'd still go to bars, we'd still go dancing, we'd still do those kind of things, but we didn't have to drink a 60 before we left the house. We didn't have to, go and eat a bunch of whatever opiates that we were using at the time. We didn't have to go and do that, because I found out how to have a normal, social, happy high without actually experiencing a high. So I learned how to do that on my own, so then I brought that back with me, and a lot of people that I was hanging out with at the time were like, whoa, that's not how we do this. And I'm like, well, it's how I do it now. I don't know.
We're going against the grain during that time too, being sober, right? And
yes,
I can kind of relate the story of Conica too, when you're in the hip hop scene and everybody's going to the after party and they all got bottles waiting for them, and then Kimmy, you come home and you're still living in Jamestown and everybody's still having their Friday night house party, and they want to indulge in that way, and you're going against the grain. You're like, no, I want to be the sober one. You were almost ostracized for that.
Definitely
the same way too.
Absolutely.
When I evidently went sober, oh, I can't go out anymore because all these people are just going to be you end up being isolated. There's a certain point of isolation when you're switching over from the lifestyle of someone who's self-medicating to someone who's self-actualizing, if that makes sense.
Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm.